town. His route took him through Tavistock Square.
When the explosion happened, the back of the doors got caved in and the roof was dented through, for whatever reason, I'm not sure, but something hit the top of the roof.
To sceptics, the presence of controlled demolition specialists at the scene of a suspicious explosion cannot be a coincidence.
Yes, it says controlled demolition on the side of the van. We do controlled demolition, but in our own way. Not with explosives, with diamond tip bits. A diamond drilling firm wouldn't be able to get a licence for you to use explosives.
Does your company have any explosives expertise?
No, none at all. None at all.
But why did the bus have the words "outright terror, bold and brilliant" on its side?
Please think about the sick minds of the people who planned the attacks.
In reality, the words were part of an advert for a film called The Descent. The devastated number 30 bus was just one of 890 buses carrying the poster in London that day. None of this explains why this man, Richard Jones, who had explosives experience, got off the bus a few seconds before it exploded.
It was deafening. We were all sort of thrown to the ground with the force. There was screaming all about. All you could see was the 30 on the back of the bus. And a huge column of vertical white smoke going up into the air.
To 7/7 ripple effect, it's credible Richard might have left the bomb behind when he got off.
He says that he and 11 other people got off the bus just before it exploded. Were the 12 of them a team to cover up what Richard Jones was doing as he planted a bomb?
The most serious allegation made by conspiracy theorists is that you actually planted the bomb on the bus and left just before it exploded.
Pass. I don't have an answer for that because I think it's so ridiculous. Anybody who knows me, would not associate me with anything like that.
But what about his explosives experience?
Yes, I did work in an explosives factory. I served my apprenticeship there for 5 years, from 1960 to 65, as an electrician. Yes, I've walked past places where they're making nitroglycerine, cordite, black powder, but I'm not a chemist. I don't understand chemistry.
How had Richard become the focus of this conspiracy theory? It turns out that he'd mentioned his background in an earlier interview, because it was the third blast he'd narrowly avoided. The first was at that explosives factory.
One of my close friends was killed. They've also been in Belfast at Europa Hotel when they blew out the reception, as I felt this was the third time that I've been fortunate to escape with my life.
There is no darker truth to Richard's presence on the bus that day. When he got on the bus at Euston Square, it was heading to Angel, where he wanted to go. But then it was diverted south towards Tavistock Square, so he decided to get off. He's a lucky man, not a conspirator.
I come up here 3 or 4 times a year just to relive and retrace my steps, pay my respects to the people on the memorial up the road, and reflect on how lucky I am.
"52 innocent people were killed on 7/7, and 784 were injured. Although the tragic events are still fresh in many people's minds, this hasn't stopped some conspiracy theorists in their aggressive and ugly pursuit of what they think is the truth.
Let me guess, this company did not have anything to do with 7/7? Question mark, question mark. Controlled demolitions must mean you know how to detonate explosives, right? You may have used remote controls whilst driving past a bus at that moment. Strange, huh? I think the conspiracy theorists behind it need something a little bit more in their lives to do. It was a terrible thing that happened. A lot of innocent people were caught up in it, and I think maybe their thoughts should be with those innocent people.
Rachel North is a 7/7 survivor who has taken on the conspiracy theorists. The reaction of some has been vicious.
If people come on and tell me I'm a lying Zionist bitch, that I'm Islamophobic, prejudiced, hateful, deceitful, front for the government, a source of misinformation, publishing my address, so they're going to pop round. You can certainly say I'm hostile to what they're saying, yeah.
This protester's video, posted on the web, shows a group accusing a former Scotland Yard police officer of being part of a government plot to murder innocent people on 7/7.
Who helped you choose those 3 stations?
He has also received hate mail from anonymous 7/7 skeptics.
Sorry, I've got to go here. How does it feel to be involved in the murder of over 50 people? You bastards were there. Justice is coming for you rats. Now you must look over your shoulder for your part in the bombings. No mercy.
Peter Power is a crisis management consultant who helps companies prepare for emergencies. In 2003, the authorities staged a full-scale exercise at a tube station in the City of London, preparing for a terrorist chemical attack. On 7/7, Mr. Power was running an exercise for a private client, preparing it for a terrorist attack in London. Could his exercise have been used as cover by the real perpetrators of the attacks? When he gave several interviews that day, he certainly gave that impression to some.
At 9:30 this morning, we were actually running an exercise for over a company of 1,000 people in London, based on simultaneous bombs going off precisely at the railway stations that happened this morning.
Peter Power said his exercise envisaged simultaneous bombings precisely where it happened that morning. But was this coincidence or conspiracy?
Just to get this right, you were actually working today on an exercise that envisioned virtually this scenario?
Almost precisely.
In 7/7 Ripple Effect, Muad'Dib hangs much of his conspiracy theory on Peter's exercise.
Peter Power, dupe or accomplice?
Muad'Dib claims the 4 men blamed for 7/7 were duped into playing the parts of mock terrorists in Peter's exercise. The real culprits then detonated pre-planted explosives. The men were murdered and framed for the attacks. Muad'Dib has calculated the odds there was no conspiracy his own way.
The probability of the 7/7/2005 drill and attack coinciding is 1 chance in
371559265750000. For the first time, Peter is demonstrating exactly what he was doing that day.
It kicked off by showing a map of London, because our client is based right in the middle.
He is rerunning the actual exercise he began on the morning of the attacks.
Our scenario involved 3 bombs, Liverpool Street, King's Cross, here in Russell Square.
On 7/7, bombs went off on tube trains in the tunnels very close to 2 of the stations Peter chose. He says this was coincidence.
The London Underground system had already been bombed 18 times since 1885. So there was a pretty logical place to actually think about having a scenario. This really was what I call a no-brainer in terms of choosing it as a scenario for terrorism.
In the months before 7/7, a city bank and the Metropolitan Police both ran exercises rehearsing their response to bombings at tube stations. The police exercise took place just 6 days before 7/7.
They weren't doing it because they knew something in advance. It was common sense, not conspiracy. This was a projection of logical scenarios based as much on historical evidence as what could happen in the future.
Conspiracy theories ignore key facts about Peter's exercise. It was nothing like the 2003 full-scale exercise. Instead, it was entirely office-based. It involved just 6 people from Reed Elsevier, a publishing company.
Absolutely nobody involved, no one beyond the room involved at all, no telephone calls.